There are millions of people who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community, and yet our society still does not acknowledge who they are and their roles in building a better world. In our insistence of preserving the status quo, we disregard our pursuit of creating a society that is just for all. Vulnerable groups such as the LGBTQIA+ community and women in general in this modern age still face decades-long challenges in achieving equality. It is our duty to continue the struggle with them. It is important that we understand who they are and that we support them in their struggle for an equal society that fully accepts them for who they are by giving them the same rights and opportunities that are only available to those who conform to the status quo. Learning their language and the terms they use is a step towards the right direction. What is gender? What is the difference between sex and gender? What is SOGI? Sex means biological traits that distinguish between males and females. There are a number of indicators of biological sex, including sex chromosomes, gonads, internal reproductive organs, and external genitalia. Gender, on the other hand, is the condition of being a man, woman, both, or neither. Sex usually refers to the biological aspects of being male or female, whereas gender implies the psychological, behavioral, social, and cultural aspects of being masculine, feminine, or neither. SOGI is the acronym for sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Sexual orientation refers to a person's sexual and emotional attraction to another person. It answers the question, who do you love? Sexual orientation is how a person characterizes their sexuality. According to Ryan Watson, there are 3 distinct components of sexual orientation. It's comprised of first, identity, second, behavior, and third, attraction. Here are some terms under sexual orientation. Gay, a sexual orientation that describes a person who is emotionally or sexually attracted to people of their own gender. It is commonly used to describe men. Lesbian, a woman who is emotionally or sexually attracted to other women. Bisexual, a person who is emotionally or sexually attracted to more than one sex or gender. Pansexual, a person who can be attracted to all different kinds of people, regardless of their biological sex or gender identity. Asexual, a person who experiences no sexual attraction to other people. Demisexual, someone who doesn't develop sexual attraction to anyone until they have a strong emotional connection. Same-gender loving, a term some in the African American community use instead of lesbian, gay, or bisexual to express sexual attraction to people of the same gender. Aromantic, a person who experiences little or no romantic attraction to others. There's a common misconception that gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation are all the same thing, but are independent from one another. Gender identity is who you see yourself as. It refers to one's internal sense of being a man, woman, or neither. This may or may not correspond to a person's sex assigned at birth or to a person's primary or secondary sex characteristics. It answers the question, who are you? Gender expression is how you present yourself to the world. It is a presentation of an individual, including physical appearance, clothing choice, and behaviors that express aspects of gender identity or role. Gender expression may or may not conform to a person's gender identity. Well-known gender expressions are gender neutral, gender fluid, or gender non-conforming. Here are terms under gender identity and expression. Gender role, the social behaviors that culture assigns to each sex. For example, we are made to believe that girls play with dolls while boys play with chalks. However, this should not be the case at all. Transgender, a person whose gender identity differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. Cisgender, a person whose gender identity aligns with the sex they were assigned at birth. Binary, the concept of dividing sex or gender into two clear categories. Sex is male or female, gender is masculine or feminine. Non-binary, someone who doesn't identify exclusively as female or male. Genderqueer, people who reject static, conventional categories of gender and instead embrace fluid ideas of gender and often sexual orientation. These are people whose gender identity can be both male and female, neither male nor female, or a combination of male and female. Agender, someone who doesn't identify as any particular gender. Gender expansive, it is an umbrella term used to refer to people who don't identify with traditional gender roles. Gender fluid, when a person is gender fluid, it means that he or she does not identify with a single fixed gender. A person whose gender identity may shift. Gender nonconforming, people who don't conform to traditional expectations of their gender. Transsexual, a person whose gender identity does not align with the sex they were assigned at birth, and who takes medical steps such as sex reassignment, surgery, or hormone therapy to change their body to match their gender. Transvestite, a person who dresses in clothing generally identified with the opposite gender or sex.
Gender and development was developed in the 1980s as an alternative to the women in development approach. Gender and development approach is concerned with the way in which a society assigns roles, responsibilities, and expectations to both men and women. It applies gender analysis to show patterns on how men and women work together using neutral interpretation of economics and competence. The two major frameworks of gender and development are gender roles and social relations analysis. Gender role focus on social construction of identities within the household. It also reveals the expectations from maleness and femaleness in their relative access to resources. On the other hand, social relations analysis exposes the social dimensions of hierarchical power relations embedded in social institutions and its influence on the relative position of men and women in society. In the Philippines, Gender and Development is a national plan that addresses, provides, and pursues a full equality and development for men and women. It was approved and adopted by former President Fidel V. Ramos as Executive Number 273 on September 8, 1995. Following the adaptation, the following related events also took place. On May 27, 1998, with DENR Administrative Order No. 98-15, revised guidelines on the implementation of gender and development activities in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources was provided. This is done in order to strengthen the DENR GAD focal point system and accomplish the GAD vision partnership of empowered men and women for sustainable development. On August 14, 2009, Republic Act No. 9710 or the Magna Carta of Women was approved. This mandates non-discriminatory and pro-gender equality and equity measures to enable women's participation in the formulation, implementation, and evaluation of policies and plans for national, regional, and local development. On October 21, 2011, a Memorandum Circular No. 2011-01 was released. It was addressed to all government departments, including their attached agencies, offices, bureaus, state universities and colleges, government-owned and controlled corporations, and all other government instrumentalities to implement guidelines and procedures for the establishment, strengthening, and institutionalization of the GAD focal point system. Gender stereotypes are generalizations about the roles of each gender. These stereotypes are generally neither positive nor negative, as they basically box genders into ideals established in society. Some examples of gender stereotypes are: women should be a housewife and a man should have a job to finance his family. Another one is men should not be emotionally sensitive, while women are emotional and vulnerable individuals. Obviously, these stereotypes are simplistic and do not at all describe the attributes of every person of each gender. Until now, even though we have different policies that reject gender stereotyping, the habit is still prevalent in our society. Thus, we can assume that it was worse before the implementation of gender and development and any other related policies. Gender and development seeks to achieve gender equality as a fundamental value that should be reflected in development choices. It contends that women are active agents of development and not just passive recipients of development. It aims to ensure that both men and women can participate in and benefit from development in a way that is equitable. This equity involves matters such as everyday needs like food, health, employment, and finance. The idea of gender mainstreaming is closely tied to gender and development. Gender mainstreaming is an approach to policymaking that takes into account both women's and men's interests and concerns. It is an inclusive strategy aimed at integrating the needs of all people. Since women and men have different needs and struggles, varying from one place to another, gender mainstreaming attempts to design, program, and evaluate policies that would recognize these differences to minimize further inequality.
Sexual harassment happens to everyone, everywhere, no matter the age, male or female. The United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women defines sexual harassment as any unwelcome sexual advance, request for sexual favor, verbal or physical conduct or gesture of a sexual nature, or any other behavior of a sexual nature that might reasonably be expected or be perceived to cause offense or humiliation to another. It may occur between persons of same or opposite sex, and both males and females can be both victims and offenders. There is no exception as to where sexual harassment can happen, since it can exist in schools, workplace, streets, our own home, and even online. The forms of sexual harassment, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, are physical, which includes malicious touching, overt sexual advances and gestures with lewd insinuation; verbal, such as but not limited to requests or demands for sexual favors and lurid remarks; the use of objects, pictures, or graphics, letters, or written notes with sexual underpinnings, and other forms similar to this. On the other hand, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EOOC, stated that there are two types of sexual harassment claims, namely quid pro quo and hostile environment. In a quid pro quo sexual harassment, it involves a demand for sexual favors in exchange for some benefit. This is usually committed by someone in a position of power or authority over another. Meanwhile, a hostile environment sexual harassment involves a speech or conduct that creates an intimidating or demeaning environment. This type is the one that is mostly done and experienced, since it includes sexual jokes, display of inappropriate or obscene materials, pervasive interactions like asking for dates persistently, catcalling, and wolf whistling. In the old law, it is not recognized that harassment can also happen between colleagues or peers and in public places like the streets, malls, and cyberspace. The Safe Spaces Act addresses these shortcomings, such as anyone can now be an offender and it can happen everywhere. It also includes sexist, homophobic, and transphobic remarks. Online sexual harassment involves invasion of the victim's privacy through cyberstalking and constant messaging, impersonating, recording or sharing photos, videos, and information without permission, and posting lies to harm their reputation. Apart from the harassed people themselves, someone else can also file a complaint. However, the victim still needs to testify to make the case stronger. In this new law, privately owned public places, employers, schools, the local government units or the LGUs, and national government agencies shall ensure one's protection against sexual harassment. Schools are obliged to investigate even if the victim does not want to file a complaint or does not request for the school to take any action. From the survey conducted in 2016 by the Social Weather Stations or SWS as part of UN Women's Safety Cities Metro Manila program, it was found out that 3 in 5 women experience sexual harassment at least once in their lifetime. Among the 800 respondents from the 2 barangays in Quezon City, 1 in 7 women admitted to being sexually harassed at least once every week, and 1 in 7 men admitted to committing sexual harassment at least daily. Furthermore, 80% of women aging from 18 to 24 years old have experienced sexual harassment once in their lifetime. It was found out that such sexual harassment includes wall whistling, lascivious language, stalking, voyeurism, groping, rubbing or touching, catcalling, indecent gestures, exhibitionism and public masturbation, sending of pornographic pictures or videos, and cyber violence. It was also found out that 58% of sexual harassment are experienced on the streets, and most of physical harassment happen in public transport vehicles. The survey further states that albeit both males and females are possible victims or offenders, males dominate the offender regardless of educational background or employment status. Because of this and the conservative family-oriented culture of Filipinos, victims rarely voice out. Usually, harassed women are silent because of the fear of being hurt or abused again. Harassed children, on the other hand, stay quiet because they are unaware that what they are experiencing is wrong, or if they tell it to their mothers, they will also stay silent and neglect it. Republic Act No. 11313, or the Safe Spaces Act, was fully enforced last 2019 and is an act defining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online, workplaces, and educational or training institutions, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties. Prior to this enactment, there was already a law that addresses sexual harassment, which is the Republic Act No. 7877 or the Anti-Harassment Act of 1995. However, this has a limited definition of sexual harassment, and it also limits who can be charged of such offense, as only persons in authority could be charged. With this new law, the scope of sexual harassment has been expanded. All this being said, it must be noted that this new law does not replace the original one. Someone could be charged under both laws if they are qualified, and offenses could cross with other laws like the Anti-Violence Against Women and Children Act. Penalties in the Republic Act No. 7877 range from imprisonment of 1 to 6 months or a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos but not more than 20,000 pesos, or both at the discretion of the court. On the other hand, penalties in the Republic Act No. 11313 ranges from 1,000 pesos and a community service up to 500,000 pesos and imprisonment, depending on the kind of sexual harassment that has been made and the number of offense. Licenses of perpetrators may be cancelled and franchises may be revoked.
It is imperative for all of us to create safe spaces for everybody, especially for those who are vulnerable to discrimination and harassment like the LGBTQIA+ community and women in our society. We just cannot allow ourselves to live in a world where vulnerable groups do not feel safe, while sexual harassers and those who discriminate against non-conforming people roam around unbothered because they know they can get away with everything. Crafting rules and laws that protect women and the LGBTQIA+ is a solid first step in building a just and equal society. The second step is giving these groups the assurance that these laws have teeth, and those who are found violating these laws are held accountable. We must strive to build a world founded on equality and justice, so all of us can wake up each day knowing our society is a safe space where we can thrive and grow.